guys, welcome to episode 9 of the Tony Wong podcast. This is a follow-up to episode 8, where we talked about pandemic dating, masculinity, and changing expectations. There's an interesting trend in pandemic dating that's different from dating pre-pandemic. I'm hearing from a lot of people that during the pandemic, there's this sense of feeling like, hey, let's dive in to really get to know each other, rather than initially focusing on the excitement of drinks, going out to dinner and having fun. I'm not saying that that excitement is over, but rather the emphasis is different. And this goes along with where we left off in episode 8 with the idea that people are looking for something real. After episode 8, I got an email blast from Hinge, from their director of relationship science. And apparently Hinge, the dating app, did a survey during the last couple of months, and the data says that since March, more than 2/3 of Hinge users are thinking more about who they're really looking for. Some people who used to quickly jump into physical intimacy are now enjoying going emotionally deep with their matches. And some commitment phobes who used to jump from one first date to the next are now experimenting with what it's like to invest in one person at a time. So in that vein, in this episode, we'll dive deeper into finding out who the right person is. We're going to be talking about things like looking for the unicorn, that perfect person that fulfills our checklist, as well as makes us feel the way we think a relationship should feel. But I have a feeling we're going to be chasing unicorns here. By that, I mean, we may be chasing something that, while exists in our imagination, doesn't actually exist in reality, just like unicorns don't exist in reality. So we'll probably talk about unicorn relationships, talk about being honest with ourselves and others, and probably even consider whether unicorn partners exist at all. And then maybe, if a unicorn person doesn't exist, maybe a unicorn relationship doesn't exist either. And maybe we're thinking about this whole relationship thing wrong. So please welcome one of our guests from episode 8, Andrea Hollenbach, to dive into these deeper topics. The segue back into this episode is something you and I talked about, like the way I used to date, who I used to date, right, was very centered around lust and excitement, right? But what happened was when I got a peek under the hood, and I didn't like what I saw under the hood, like emotionally, it would turn off the sexual excitement, right? So then now I'm thinking, well, wait a second. What if it works in reverse? What if I'm dating a totally different type of person where communication is great?
Yeah.
This is the whole yin-yang pairing,
Yep.
right? The conversation is great. What if I look underneath the hood and that turns on the sexual excitement?
Yeah.
So that's what I don't know, right? So I'm like, so we have great conversations. Is this going to turn on the sexual excitement? That's why I don't know.
I think that it will, or it has potential to. It relates back to what I mentioned this in the last episode, where you could be the hottest guy, cover of GQ, whatever, but I talk to you and it's underneath the hood, it's just not there. Right. You're instantly not hot to me, not attractive, nothing. But you could be like, yeah, like you're like a good looking dude and whatever. And then I talk to you and intellectually, conversationally, lifestyle wise, things just start to click. And underneath the hood, it's really great. All of a sudden he goes from a 7 to a 10.
Right.
Yeah. And I imagine it has to be the same for men to women. Because
does it?
That's what I'm wondering.
I think guys just get so distracted by the sparkly exterior though.
Yes.
And then even if you meet a woman who has like the most beautiful interior, you see the sparkly exterior woman that's a 10 walking down the street and you're like, shit.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Because guys think with their lower half way more than I think women, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, there's probably some science to that. I don't know if we have the backup data though to dive into it. Yeah, I think I said, and then I think that leads to the interesting conversation of, and this gets guys in a lot of trouble. I think maybe women sometimes too, but is this all on one person?
Yeah.
And because the guy does want this deep relationship sometimes too, and for lack of a better term, wife material. If you're just kind of doing gender norms here, and then, but then there's always this constant like that might be nice also, right? Like that you never seem to grow out of, and I and maybe this isn't all guys. Maybe this is just me and Tony that are like.
No, I mean we're fighting 10,000 years of history. It's always worked that way, right?
Yeah. Almost every guy I know, without getting any of them in trouble, I think a lot. This is a pretty common conversation, and so the and this creates all kinds of problems across different areas of your life. And maybe that it may be interesting one day to talk about maybe religion helps constrain this, or certain tribal like deep, like in Saudi Arabia like certainly level things. Yeah, right. And maybe that's one of the big benefits of religion on society is helping constrain some of this stuff. But I do think this is really interesting because it comes back to the unicorn thing of, can you find, if you're a guy in a normal gender thing, can you find a woman that is deep, that is hot, and everything else to you at least that you all want, or is that just too hard? Maybe they do exist, but it's just super hard. Or is there something else at work where you can't find it anyways because just the way things work, like the way your brain tends to focus at one moment, you find it in this person, but you're not going to find the rest because you found this. I worry about that too, right? Where
yeah, I mean, like let's say like from a neuroscience perspective. Like, so you sent me an article, right? The yin yang, and essentially, if you look at from neuroscience, yin, the female, is much like the right brain, and yang is very rational, much like the left brain. And guys tend to be more left brain, women tend to be more right brain, and so that tends not to exist in one person. Like a woman who's like very in her young, we would have great conversations with because they're both like left-brained.
Yeah.
But the sex comes when one is right-brained in the woman.
Yeah.
And the guy is rational, and then you have this polarity thing.
Yeah.
And the sex lights up.
Sure.
So how the hell are you going to have both?
Yeah, and I wonder, like, there may be windows of time where they all align, because everybody changes, day to day, and
that's her, yeah,
right, and so, but does it align enough, right? Or because of keeping score or habits or whatever in the relationship, does it not happen enough to be valued, and then that leads you to seek someone else for whatever that missing need is.
So the yin and yang yin is the feminine energy and yang is the masculine energy. And it has nothing to do with like your literal gender. Like we all have yin and yang energy. Men just tend to go more into the yang and women more into the yin. Right. But I believe it's because we have these narratives in our brain of this is what it means to be a female and this is what it means to be a male.
Yep.
And that puts us in these camps that makes it really hard to have an effective relationship and to shift. So we talked about how there might be a moment in time where someone needs to be a little bit more yin and someone needs to be a little bit more yang, but you need to let go of your manly narrative to shift into your yin a little bit when your woman needs whatever she needs at that moment. You know what I mean?
And that's what we talked about in episode 8, doing the work so you can meet the woman where she's at, right?
Yeah. And it'd be interesting, so if you do the work, which is really looking into yourself and understanding what are your common patterns and way of living, how you show up every day. What are your patterns dating, this and that, and working to debunk those patterns. Maybe you would stop getting so distracted by the 10 walking down the street when you have a woman who maybe on the exterior is more of a 7 or 8, but her interior is a 10, 11, 12.
So I've been doing that. But it still doesn't undo like the 10 walking down the street. So
Maybe that's just human nature.
So, and I wonder about this. Is actually, we just landed on something I hadn't thought about this as we were talking about this episode before. But I wonder, like, a lot of this is also like you just have all the societal stuff. You have the religion, the tribe pressures, all this stuff, and like even gender. There's like a really difficult thing to work through now. And so if you go to all the conservative things like, I need to act like a woman, I need to act like a man, or whatever gender you're choosing, a lot of that has like religious underpinnings that also come with all this baggage related to sex and monogamy and all these other things. And we keep trying to separate out from something like, oh, I don't want to go to church, but I still have to be monogamous because everybody expects me to be, or whatever, right? Yeah. And so and so part of this is like and this may be the conservative's fear, the religious person's fear that we all just turn into hedonistic, whatever as time goes on. If you leave behind all the restrictions that help contain this, right? And we may have never ran that experiment in history. The conservatives would argue Sodom and Gomorrah was running that experiment, and then they got destroyed, right, or whatever. But and that was a valuable lesson that they drive into you as a kid, right, if you're in the Judeo-Christian faiths or whatever. But so I wonder, like, this baggage is like, we're the rules that we're following to date or to maintain a relationship, they're kind of on a broken ladder, and it's like. And everybody has a different broken ladder, and then you're trying to mesh it up together, this relationship. And then some people, as you get older, like as I got older and in my relationship with my wife, you start to recognize these things more, or maybe one of you does, the other one doesn't yet. And then that starts creating friction, right, in the relationship too. And so it'd be interesting, like, is there a conversation where you identify, or is there an exercise like doing the work, where you identify what your broken ladder looks like these are my weird boundaries, because that may be creating the unicorn problem also. Like, we can't get the two puzzle pieces to meet because your ladder looks, you have rungs here, and here that are broken that way, mine are this way, and we can never connect our ladders fully, and we're never happy, right? And then when the 10 walks by, we see a perfect ladder, or
think it's a perfect ladder.
Yeah, or the ladder parts that I'd like to connect, right, to make my ladder more perfect, whatever it is. And then, that creates this issue, right, of longing or desire or lust.
I mean, how much older do I have to get to realize that the unicorns just don't exist?
No.
Yeah, and I think, that's another thought you just jumped in my head, because I saw this survey a while ago, I don't remember where, but it was talking about sexual satisfaction as you age. And it actually goes up every 10 years until you hit 80. And then it starts to drop.
Your sexual satisfaction?
Yeah, like with your relationship, they surveyed people, different age groups, and actually 70-year-olds are actually pretty happy with sex, which was interesting, right? And I think I was leaning towards, I was wondering, it's because your body starts falling apart, so you can't enjoy sex. Maybe that's it, right? Because it's not looks by that point, right? there's very few. You got Harrison Ford and maybe somebody else out there, but there's not too many like 70-year-olds that maintain their attractiveness. So, but maybe it's also some kind of weird wisdom around this, where you're like, it's just not worth it, right? Like by the time you get to 80, you figured it out. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd imagine there's some level of wisdom, and you just realize you have a new perspective on life, where you realize the fun, quick, fancy thrill things they're just temporary. And even with whoever your current partner is, it's just like when people think happiness is a destination, for example, it's erroneous thought, because happiness is a feeling, it's emotion, just like anger or sadness is. It comes and it goes. So with your partner, you're going to have ups and downs, and things are going to come and they're going to go. So don't let yourself get distracted by the 10 walking by, because that's just going to be a temporary high. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like this is pointing to Margaret Mead's point of view. Margaret Mead was a famous anthropologist, been married 4, 5, 6 times. And her point of view was every person should get married 3 times for 3 different purposes. First one was for your first love. Second was to build like a partnership to build a family. And the third one is companionship. So if I look at myself, I got the family like built. I even have the family with my ex-wife. and that all works. So then should I be just looking for companionship translated into like fun? If that's the case, wouldn't I just go for the hot 10? No?
But
Maybe I do think, and then jump right over to you. I do wonder, do you want to die alone? Right?
Right.
And if you don't have kids or you only have a small number of kids, you're really taking a big risk of dying alone if you don't figure out how to get this relationship thing. And maybe it's okay to die alone. We all die alone anyways at the end of the day.
Right.
But like, it'd be interesting to see like how many years, and this probably impacts women more than men because they tend to live longer, but how many years are people alone before they die, right? And truly alone, like there's no kids, and there's no spouse, right? And maybe you have some friends, but that's it, right? So there's no close family stuff. Is that like a investment you should be making so that when you are 70, 80, 90, there's something there, right? Or is it just about just maximize the good years as far as you can, and then just read books in your 70s, 80s, 90s, or whatever.
So I think the way you said something, so should I be going for, like, you were kind of going into her narrative, and you should not fall into her narrative. Take it in Meads.
Oh, yeah.
You were like, well, so she suggested this, so is this what I should do? It's like, you do what Tony wants to do and what you need to do. But let's just say you're like, yeah, I mean, if you really relate to what she's saying, the third time you get married is more of like companionship fun. That hot 10 walking down the street, that's guarantee fun.
Right.
Yeah. Like you'll go to one trip to Vegas and then you'll be like, I'm out. Like I can't stand her anymore.
3 trips. Yeah. But yeah. But oh man, see, this is also what we were talking about, pre-pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Like dating, at least my hypothesis is dating is the pinnacle of excitement. It's the forum in which all your fantasies, your most exciting fantasies play out. Like the exotic trips, the highly planned dates, the excitement, the sex, the whole thing. But now that we can't really do all that, we're kind of restricted and the restaurants and bars aren't open. So now people are getting more real.
It's getting caught up in the narrative of what culture is telling us. This is fun. This is dating. Dating is The Bachelor, and we're in a helicopter, and we're going to this island and that place, and doing this fancy dinner, and we're dressed to the nines, and blah blah blah. And it's like that's not real life. That's a fairy tale.
But it's so fun.
It's so fun, but it's not. It's not a fairy tale. It's going to go poof and it's going to be gone.
And I think that's the point. It's a great point you just made, because that is the thing pandemics have probably taught, especially rich people or Americans, or whatever. Because, if we're in the sub-Sahara somewhere as longtime people living there, we probably think of dating totally different than Americans or people living in LA think of dating, right? And so the pandemic has exposed this thing, and I'm curious what's going to happen as we get out of it. Do we revert back to,
having fun?
Just having fun and the bar, like, and we're gonna and the ways to have fun, like it's a Vegas trip or it's a trip, somewhere or whatever. It's a nice dinner, or is it gonna be whatever's happening now? People are learning how to get through it, because we got 6-9 more months, I think, before people are going to be really comfortable to even think about sitting in an intimate restaurant. And so how does that play out long term to the culture? Because this is all culture, actually. The pandemic should make it clear to everybody now it's culture, because the culture was this way. The culture can't be that way anymore. And so now we have to do this, right? And we're building new norms. And does that culture stick, or do we just throw it away?
Okay, so someone told me that they found this interesting. Prior to this round of dating, because I got out of a really tough relationship in the past 9 months. So prior to this round of dating, I had a type.
Yeah.
And it was all brunette, and they were mostly Latin, and they just kind of exuded like sensuality. Like, I know about dry bars, like blowouts, and I know about like women's purses and shoes, and because they just did that.
Yeah.
But that didn't work out for long-term relationships, although very fun. So now that I've shifted, what's weird is most of the women I'm dating, like 80%, 90%, are all blonde. Because that wasn't my type, and this is more like cerebral. But God damn it.
I wonder, I'd love to hear your perspective on this, because with me, when I saw that in the show notes, I was like, holy shit, I've never actually thought about hair color and the relationship, like the type, right. That you're into. And then when I was reading some of the ways you've been thinking about it, I was like, that seems to ring true. So and then I was like, like my wife is blonde, and it's like good wife, right? Yeah. So yeah, that's super interesting. And so, I'm curious from the female perspective, is that, when you look across your gender, is there agreement across your gender that blondes are different than brunettes and redheads or whatever? Or because it's crazy, I just turned 51 and I've never seriously considered. There's always the joke blondes have more funds, or the weird stereotypes, but I've never really thought of it from like when I look at the catalog of dating and like what my experiences were. But now that you say that, it's like there does seem to be something there, at least anecdotally.
I would have to see these women more than just their hair color, because I think it's not a hair. It is. I think the hair color is just a coincidence.
Interesting. I mean, they do change hair color too, right? And so that's what I'm wondering. But does hair color also change your personality? Like if you choose to go red or dark, do you feel different? Or you?
I think people's first impressions of you might be different, but if you really know the person, it's just Tony's Tony, whether he has blonde hair or black hair. You know what I mean?
So what about this whole idea of, so we talked about we're all programmed to be chasing this excitement. Mm-hmm. And we're programmed by media and our culture to expect dating to be like The Bachelor, the show The Bachelor, right? And the way I see it, that's kind of lust. It's lust and excitement. And so a lot of people, myself included until just recently, never knew the difference between love and lust. I had conflated the two. Mm-hmm. And so my idea of love was that kind of that chemistry feeling where you're just really excited, you can't see straight, you feel so great with this person, everything's awesome, right? Centered around intimacy. But what I've learned is that's not love. And so I have a mentor, a teacher, and I said, I told her, I don't know what love is. She's like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, I don't know what it is. She's like, well, what do you have with your son? I was like, oh, okay. No, you mean that's love? I thought that was just a different type of love.
Yeah.
But kind of that unconditional, like, I will do anything for you.
Yeah.
And it isn't centered, below the waist.
Yeah.
So that's love. And so the other stuff was lust, but we're programmed to do that. And so now I'm going through this cycle of like developing love, and it's just not quite as exciting as the lust.
Well, I think the other interesting thing about that I've struggled a lot with this actually, is I have the capacity to love a lot of people, right? Like, my kids, wife. Yeah. There's very few of my girlfriends I've ever actually broken up with, like in the sense where, if they called me, in fact, when I was dating my current wife, before we got married, she's my second wife, and we were in our 20s, and I had a girlfriend 3 or 4 years before who got in a serious car accident, and we were still emotionally close. We just wasn't going to work out for all kinds of reasons. Part, we were in the Air Force and we were forced to live apart because the Air Force moved us to 2 different places. So it's kind of like an unrequited kind of love thing back then, right? Where now we're just friends. But she got in a serious car accident, and my current wife had met her because there was an event where we all ended up at, and I'm like, hey, sorry, I'm going to get on a plane and go to the hospital because she doesn't have family. And she's got machines tied up to her and her legs in a crazy brace. And she's going to wake up and no one's going to be there, right? And I felt like I had to get on a plane to go do that, even though, we hadn't had any kind of serious relationship for 3 or 4 years. And I would do that again today, actually. right? And there may be 3 or 4 other of the number of women that I've dated that I would do the same thing for.
So you're saying that's love?
That's
right?
love. I think it is love.
Yeah.
It's not sexual love. Like it's not
Right.
like this deep lust kind of thing. But then the thing I was going to bolt onto that, I also can lust for multiple people at the same time, and I wonder like how unique is that? Is that most people just lust zeros in, or is it society's rules that just help contain it? Or are there just people where like, hey, I can love multiple people, I can lust multiple people. Society's rules are really constraining, right?
That feels like a male point of view.
Yeah, that's right. And I was curious.
I think so. I think a lot of people behave based on what society or their religion or their whatever tells them, or whatever they watched in the media or what their parents did. But I think that's honestly one of our biggest challenges in this life is we keep doing stuff because we think that's what we're supposed to do, when it's like not necessarily. So if there's somebody who wants to have multiple partners and have an open relationship, whatever, that's fine. I'd imagine that the partner or partners they have that open conversation with. In fact, I know people who are polyamorous, yeah.
Yeah.
And they actually have successful relationships, but it's because they're meeting with people, they're attracting like people. So they're on the same playing field. And they have an open, honest communication about it, and they work with it.
Man.
But I wonder how many people are trapped because of the society rules. Where the Venn diagram of those people, it seems small. Like I personally don't know. I know they exist, and I've seen the TV shows, but I don't know any open poly people. And I feel like even if I wanted to be poly, I don't know which club to go to meet them. And if you did, it feels like there wouldn't be a lot of people open into the lifestyle, right? Because it's you're turning your back on all these society rules, and you're going to be like a pariah and potentially and all those things. And so, but then I wonder like how many people there really are that if they could just work it out with their partner and their boss and their church and their kids' teachers or whatever, we'd be way more poly, right? Than what is the normal thing. Because I feel I've never seen a survey on it. You see surveys on like what percentage of the population is gay or whatever, but like what percentage of the population, if unconstrained, would shift into poly or move in and out of monogamous and poly, also.
So I'm not a rule follower.
Yeah.
I'm more of like, I just do my own thing.
Yeah.
But through this discussion, I'm like, oh man, someone just tell me what to do. I mean, there's just like way too much choice, way too much complexity to try to navigate this. Am I the only one?
I don't think you're the only one.
I think there's something to where it is very complex. There's all kinds of risks to manage. And a lot of this still goes back to this societal pressure, rules, tribe, 5,000 years of history thing, and not so much internal to the average human, right? Like I wonder if you could run the experiments ethically, if you just got kids together, right when they're first born, you left them alone on an island, I feel like you'd end up with a poly island with the occasional monogamous thing happening, maybe the occasional murder also because of monogamous style jealousy, but I don't think we'd end up with the society we have today.
Sure.
With all these rules.
Let's talk about you.
What about me?
So in episode 8, we talked about you guys looking for men who did the work.
Yeah.
Right. So since we have you back, what type of man are you looking for? And what does it mean to do the work?
I'm not looking for a man personally. Like, I'm not looking for a relationship. It's not a priority in my life right now. I don't know if I hope it just happens. Like, I think that it will just happen for me. Like, I will not be thinking about it, and I'll meet somebody and things will just happen. But when I think about, I personally I prefer a more monogamous route. I understand where people go the other way. So if I'm going to spend my life with somebody, I prefer it to be more of a monogamous situation. And I want someone who can just be my companion, like my partner in life, someone to build with, someone to have fun with, someone who can support me when I need it and I them, because we go through ups and downs in life, and having that person that you can always go to is so great. They have to be confident. They have to be strong mentally, emotionally, and they have to be able to have productive conversation. So when I say productive conversation, it's like if I bring up something that's not working for me, like, hey, it's really frustrating me when you do this, instead of coming back at me, well, you bloody, blah. It's like, oh, like, okay, let's talk about it. Or vice versa. I'm a very independent woman, very strong woman, and I guess I can be known as an alpha female. I can definitely shift into my other not alpha energies, and I need to have a man that's not threatened by that. And if he's an alpha male, that's totally cool, but I prefer that he's able to shift. We talked about this earlier, right. Shifting of the energies. You and I were talking the other day, the Laird Hamilton example.
Right.
Oh, his wife, they were both alphas, and neither of them, well, he wasn't willing to step down being alpha ever. And so she just decided, I'm just going to shut this part of my personality off. And so she did that for the rest of her life. And it's like, you shouldn't have to sacrifice that. And I think if Laird had done the work, which is assessing why, when she's in an alpha situation, why is that triggering me to be combative, to be defensive, to be frustrated, and going deep into that pattern, that trigger. So those triggers are those things. So those, like, let's say your roommate slams doors, or they leave the lights on, or someone says they're going to be there in 5 minutes, but they don't show up for another 10 to 20, and those things frustrate you. Those are triggers. And those triggers, those things that get you going, that rile you up, those are the things to stop and take a step back and be like, why is this really bothering me? And that's where your work starts, is starting to go into those triggers.
Right.
And then reprogramming them so they don't trigger you. So I going back to the Laird situation, if he was being triggered when his wife was in her most alpha, if he could have just paused and stepped out of himself for a second to look at himself objectively, like, what's really going on here? He may have found a way to meet her and start to shift his energy so that she didn't have to give up those parts of her personality forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You know, when I'm getting, in this discussion of unicorn partners and unicorn relationships, it may be possible, but as the expectations of wanting and having it all increase, the complexity increases, right? Mm-hmm. Being able to shift and skillfully manage the triggers. As those expectations shift, the complexity goes up, and so that requires more skill, right?
Yeah.
Now the male and female have to be able to adeptly shift from yin and yang.
Yeah.
And that requires a whole lot of skill, mostly communication and emotional intelligence skill.
Yeah.
So, what I'm getting is, yes, it's possible, but it's going to be like threading the needle. It's going to be difficult.
It's going to take time. Yeah, and it's going to take work.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's back to this keeping score thing too, where you're going to move in and out of it. And then the question is, were you in it enough to maintain the relationship, right? Like whatever the connection is you're trying to do. And no one's being taught this. Like we're all on our own trying to figure this out. And there needs to be, and we should talk about it more if we have thoughts about how to help people do it better, right?
I don't know. So you told me a story of some people you've observed this with people or they have the family, they have like the multi-million-dollar house, right. They've got the car, they've got the income, they've got the job, this and that. But you even said to yourself, their life is miserable.
Yeah.
Miserable. So it's like, do you want to live a full life of misery and then tiptoeing around your wife to go sleep with your side girls and this and that, whatever? You're still coming home, and even though you've got the side girls, you're still miserable when you come home.
True.
Or do you want to find somebody who's willing to work through this shit with you? that you can enjoy most of life with. But you have your ups and downs, but you're willing to work through it together. And it's hard, but you get through it.
I mean, you know what I'm getting is, maybe this is what my teacher meant. God damn it. She said, relationships are the crucible of life, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's a microcosm of life itself. Like, to be able to work your desires for a sexual hot relationship and also your needs for intellectual stimulation, to be able to work that out is like, that's all of life, right? To find a partner and be able to do that that's it.
It's the enlightened human right? I mean, I think at the base level, though, if you're two mice or two rabbits or two humans, it is mostly just, there is this lust drive to keep life moving, right? So have kids, and whether you raise them correctly or together as a family unit, all those things, those become more like society pressures. And, rabbits, everybody else besides humans, pretty much as soon as they're self-sufficient, they're done with them, right? And so maybe elephants are different, I don't know. But so how do you tease apart, or really how do you value the rest of it, right? Once you're past the lust piece, how you value it, what upside it's giving you in the whole picture. Like, if you're married and you have kids, you want your kids to have a stable home, you want them to grow up. That's the way I think about it way more. I'm not worried about society's pressure if I get divorced. Like, I don't care what my parents think or my brothers or, any of that stuff. So, but where a lot of people have to worry about that too. So that's even another kind of pressure thing. But for me, it's much more, even if I'm in some dark place with my wife that seems hopeless or whatever, at some point in the past or whatever, you still want to work through it for the kids. Right, there's a responsibility thing that was instilled in me, and also I just worry, about the impact, right? And so you'll take on some misery, right, to keep the marriage together or whatever, and then I think a lot of people end up in where you're married, have kids. There's a lot of value in that for all kinds of reasons, even with the relationship with the other person, but you still want someone else.
Yeah.
Right. Or multiple someone else.
That's how my marriage ended.
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of marriages end this way on one side or the other. And so, and if you don't want the marriage to end, you either have to have a willing spouse to work with you on that other piece, or you have to hide it.
Yeah.
Right. And there's not an easy path there because, you can, as a very rational, mature adult who has pretty good emotional control, you can say, look, for the sake of you, I'm just going to give that up. Right. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to lie to you. And I'm just going to tell you that, whatever. And we're just going to try to work on this. There's a pretty big set of unhappiness that comes with that also. Right. Like, and even if you do a ton of work in the other person, they still may not be able to meet it is I think the problem. Right. And so you're sacrificing, much like Laird's wife, hypothetically, right, has sacrificed this part of her. You're sacrificing this part of you. What mostly to me is a weird society rule that says I'm supposed to be monogamous if I love you. And your feelings are hurt because I'm not monogamous, because in the Romeo and Juliet thing or whatever it is, we're supposed to just be monogamous if that's true love. Right? Like that's the rational way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
Which she wouldn't think that at all. For her, it's like there's just an unwritten, or there's a written rule even, that you just can't, when you're married, do this. And if you're going to do it, then we can't be married, right?
Yeah, you just said a lot, and I'm trying to, like, there are some things that I wanted to unpack, and I'm trying to piece my thoughts together. One thing is, like, staying together for the kids. I come from a divorced family. I personally don't think that's necessarily the right move. Like, my parents split up. They didn't stay together for the kids. And I'm really glad they split up, because if they would have stayed together, it would have been a nightmare. And as an adult, I understand why they split up, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But then it's also like, going back to doing the work and understanding your triggers, it's like, why do you keep wanting that other thing or that other person or the whatever? And maybe, just maybe, you're not in the right relationship. And just because you took a vow and you're married and whatever, that doesn't mean you should stay in misery for the rest of your life. And I think hiding it is no better, because it's a disadvantage to them, when you guys could maybe just have the conversation and figure it out. Or you could just have the conversation and go your separate ways, and then you can find whatever it is that you're looking for.
Yeah. Well, that's the spot I'm in.
Yeah.
So I had the conversation, and so I got a hall pass, right?
Yeah.
And so I lived out of the house, what was it? Wednesday and Thursdays.
Uh-huh.
I lived with my single buddy, and I'd come back home. And I did that for a few months, and for maybe like 3 or 4 months. And then I just moved out entirely, and we were separated. And then it was pretty much like I was just heading down the path of like fun.
Yeah.
But, I divorced, and we didn't use attorneys. Our whole split took 2.5 hours, and we were done. And she still has the code to my house. I have the code to her house.
Sure.
So everything's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm still looking for the unicorn, or am I?
But what do you even know what you want?
Yeah, I want everything. I want my cake and have it too. I want to have my cake and eat it too. But
Why?
Fuck, I don't know. Society program that shit in me.
That's for me, that's the issue of a root cause of a lot of our dating and relationship issues is people are trying to do what society tells them because they think that's what they're supposed to do, and that's what's going to be the successful route, and that's what's going to make them happy, but that's not necessarily true.
Right.
That's right. Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. But I think the other problem too is when you're in these relationships, especially someone who has capacity to love multiple people, right? You don't want to hurt the other person either. And even not even related to an affair or whatever. It's just you genuinely want to make that person as happy as you can, right? That's probably what attracted you to marry them to begin with. If you made a good decision on your second marriage, you learned a lot in your first marriage, and then which was more or less based, and then your second marriage, you're like, I'm going to try to pick better. And it literally was, I want to make sure I pick a wife that could be good with family. Right? And so you there's a different profile. I think that you may pick it wrong, but you have something in your mind. And so and then you're off and running with that, and then you're like, oh shit, that's still not everything I want.
Yeah.
So then you're in the situation, and then you're like, but I actually don't want to ruin it. It's not even for the kids. It's there's a lot I like about this, and I want to keep it, but I need one more toy in the garage, or whatever, right? And to be happy. And that toy I don't need to be super attached to. That's just a fun toy, get another toy, or whatever. And I think this is a very normal state for a lot of guys. And some of them just have more discipline, or they're just afraid to try it, or they just have so much religious pressure or family pressure, they would never risk it. But I think in their head, they're still very much man, if I could build another garage on the side of the house and get another toy in there, I would definitely do that, right? And the state of Utah is basically that, right? And probably parts of Idaho too.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe we just get really tangible since we have Andrea.
Yeah.
I have a list of questions that a couple guys sent me, and we aggregated.
Okay.
Did you answer these? If you aren't a male model, how do you separate yourself from the pack? That's interesting. How,
So if you're not a male model, how do you separate yourself from the pack? Well, if you're not a male model, you're going to be separated. Because you can tell, anytime I see a model or an actor guy, I'm I can tell, and they separate themselves.
Oh, really?
For me, yeah.
Because there's baggage that comes with that? Or
it's just not from my personal experiences, hasn't been my type. My lifestyles, other things just have not matched up or worked for me. But okay, so male models are out. Now it's more of a general population of dudes, how do you separate yourself from this general population? That's interesting. It depends on the context, I guess. It's like on an app or in person?
On an app.
On an app. Just be you. Let your quirkiness show. Like, people are so quick to hide and restrict themselves to what they think they're supposed to say. Like, we talked about this last time.
Give us an example. What would that look like?
I know the best spot in town for sushi. I know the best spot in town for martinis. The picture, I don't know.
That's like the usual stuff you get, right?
Yeah.
So what would be the unusual stuff?
Unusual is, it's hard for me to answer because I don't spend a lot of time on the apps. Like, I really don't. So for me, it's more, how do you separate yourself from the pack in real life? You have the balls to come say hi. You say, hey, how are you? How's it? Just some casual conversation. It doesn't even need to be, can I buy you a drink?
In Whole Foods.
Could be Whole Foods. It happens all the time. I've never actually taken a number.
At Whole Foods.
At Whole Foods. Interestingly enough, when I have my mask on and I've been to Home Depot, there's so many guys that are like, you're so beautiful. I'm like, what are you talking about? You can't even see.
What are you doing at Home Depot?
I'm very crafty.
So go up to you in Home Depot and just, have the courage to do so and say hi.
Yeah, I can't guarantee it's always going to.
Sure. For all those people living in Los Angeles and looking at the Home Depot on Culver, is it?
Yeah. Something that also I think catches my attention is when a guy he clearly is carrying himself like in a group of people. Like, he's not jumping into what everyone else is doing, or he's not trying to puff his chest up too much. You can see a level of confidence and self-assurance, but he's not like the douche that needs all the attention, and that's just kind of acting a fool, and he's not just doing what everybody's doing. He's just holding his own. It's kind of hard to put into words.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's those are the intangibles, and they're hard to put into tangible
And
words.
I think my suggestion when you approach a woman would be to be as casual and just friendly. Like, because
like
that's comfortable. Yeah. Like, it's just like, we're just having a conversation. Like, we're having conversations now. You know what I mean?
Okay, great. So that's some tangible stuff.
Yeah.
Some other interesting questions were, like, is the hard to get game still a thing? Or is there a texting rule after the first date? How do you know?
Let's pause on the hard to get game.
And this is post-COVID, or your current COVID.
Current
right?
COVID.
Yeah, during COVID. This is the rules we're talking about. Yeah.
I don't know what the rules on the hard to get game are. Current COVID, post, whatever.
Okay.
But I will tell you that I hate those games.
Yeah, okay. I hadn't even thought of these games, but
it's interesting because so many people are fueled by them. And to me, I think that's a trigger. That's a trigger where it's like, why are you only fueled by playing games of, well, they didn't text me back for a day, so I'm not going to text them back for 2. Or they posted a story or something with other women, I'm going to post a story with, like, just these stupid catty things. It's like, why is that triggering you? And why is that what motivates you to like somebody? Like, that's a perfect trigger for you to just take a step back and go to do a little introspection on, if we're going to talk about doing some work.
okay.
Personally, like, I think it's a waste of time. I'd rather you be direct. Are we talking because you just want to casually hook up? You just want someone to talk to? You're interested in me? You want to see where this might go? You want to be with me? What is it? Like, just have the guts to just be honest. For me, those games, I'm going to be like, I'm out. Like, I don't have time for this shit at all.
How many other women have that point of view?
I think, like, if I asked the women I knew, I think they would agree. They would be like, it's frustrating. It also induces anxiety. Like, this isn't healthy for us. Because people are like, oh God, he didn't text me back, or she didn't text me back. What are they thinking? And they start like going through all this stuff in their head. And it's like, what? Nobody should feel like that. Nobody should ever be made to feel like that.
This sounds really ideal. Yeah. I'm wondering if like this, kind of like the whole unicorn discussion, is this an ideal thing that is in your head that doesn't actually play out in reality?
No, because I've actually played it out in reality like more than once. So there was one guy that he actually slid into my DMs on Instagram, and I normally don't reply on Instagram, but for whatever reason I decided to reply to this man. He's still one of my friends to this day.
Okay.
But when we first started hanging out, like it was like wasn't totally sure like what, like I went like when I met up with him and his friends, totally like I'm gonna meet up with these guys, I'm gonna go out, have fun, meet some people, go home, whatever. He and I ended up having chemistry, and I didn't think we would have chemistry. Like based on my initial impressions of him, I'm like, I just didn't think I would have any connection or chemistry, but there was. And then we hung out, but like I didn't want anything, and he didn't want anything, and we hooked up. But then we had the conversation, and he was just like, because I was like, what are your motives? Like, what are your intentions here? Just so I'm clear. And he's like, I don't have intentions. I'm not trying to date. I don't want to date. I'm not emotionally available. I'm not where I'm at to be in a relationship, whatever. He's like, now that I know you, like I respect you, and you're not just like a piece of ass or whatever. And like that helped me understand where he was. And I'm like, okay, that's good, because I don't really want a relationship either. Whatever. And then we were able to go our ways and just maintain a friendship versus keep going down this weird tit for tat path and then just ghost each other. You know what I mean?
So how long ago was this?
A year ago.
Okay. So I bet there might be other people listening to this wondering, okay, who is this dude? What does he do? What does he look like? Could we see?
I don't really have pictures of him, but
there's always Google.
And I also have a second situation that happened that was recent. That was during COVID, actually.
Okay.
So it was a guy I met a couple years ago, and then we went on dates a couple years ago. Like he took me out to dinner, and it was like we were intending to go on dates.
Give us specifics. Like how old is this guy? What does he do?
He's my age. At the time he worked at a corporation. Now he works at a spirit startup. He's leading all of their sales and all sorts of things there.
How tall is he?
He's really tall.
6'4". 6'4".
Very tall. Very tall.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like model hot, he is.
He's a really good looking guy.
Okay.
He's athletic. He's attractive.
Okay.
He's smart. He's motivated. He's successful. He's nice. He's respectful. He's just a good guy. It's funny.
Sounds like a unicorn.
It's hilarious. Because this is a perfect example of you see a 10, but it's just that thing is just not there. Or
the thing? The chemistry?
No, like we have. Oh man, I might need to edit some of this.
See, that's the juicy stuff. When we say we got to edit this, let's hear it. I want to see it. Can't we see? Oh wait, I can see. It won't be on film, and I can be like, and I'll give my own interpretation.
Yeah. Wait. You want to see him?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I can show you the other one too. The other one is. I do not feel comfortable talking about this because they're both in my life still, and they'll like listen. This is just awkward.
It gets awkward.
Yeah, that's the awkward stuff is what we want.
But to the point of the like what we were talking about, like there was no games with either of these men.
Okay.
None.
Hand it over.
But why? So okay, first let me pause you. Why are you so curious about the physical attributes?
Because we're getting your perspective, your point of view, which we also want to get, but we want to see how different they are from a guy's point of view. Like you can't see him. Okay.
So this one, when we started hanging out again during COVID, like I just like we were like started chatting, like, hey, we should catch up, blah blah blah, and we hung out. No big deal. It was very platonic, very friendly, and then we started hanging out more. We crossed some lines. Things kind of got confusing a little bit, and then it gave me a little bit of anxiety because I'm like, I don't want a relationship, and I don't want a casual hooking up situation. And I just had the honest conversation with him because out of respect for him, I did not want to lead him on or waste his time. I didn't know where his head was at.
Okay.
And so we had the conversation before we went to dinner a couple weeks ago, and he was like, I could tell something was up. And he's like, I'm really glad you said something. Thank you. And I'm like, if this changes, you know, how we spend time together or don't spend time together, or if we talk, if we don't talk, if you don't ever want to talk to me again, I totally get it. And he's like, it's not like we're friends, and now I know where you're at, you know where I'm at, and now we're good. Like, we had the honest conversation. And I think there's so many people in the dating world that are so uncomfortable with those conversations that they'll just ghost or whatever.
So anyways, I looked at the guy. Yeah, he's not like your typical model looking dude. I think he's a normal, good looking dude.
I'm not attracted to the model looking dudes,
And
honestly.
so,
But super fit, right?
yeah.
Well, I guess there's a relative on this, you know.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like a normal athletic dude.
Very
Yeah.
athletic.
But he's not like the cover of like some
No.
fitness
Yeah, he's
magazine
not
model
like
looking guy. He looks like a normal dude.
He's very
Normal,
attractive,
good-looking
and
dude.
when the way he carries himself in public, in person, the way he conversates, carries himself, it makes him even more attractive.
Okay, so
like,
yeah.
He's a good example of like if I met him on a dating app, my first impressions would have been like, I'm not really sure, but then in person and through conversation and discovering more of what's under the hood, he got hotter and hotter.
Okay. So where's this all leading to? I feel like I don't have any answers. Do you have any answers?
It's interesting. Like, I don't know if we had 30 people in here, we'd get the answers, right? Like, I think...
But we want to give some listeners some answers.
I know. Like, to me, I think the most interesting thing we've been talking about is back to the work, right? Which is, you know, whatever type of relationship.
Do you have any answers?
It's interesting. Like, I don't know if we had 30 people in here, we'd get the answers, right? Like, I think...
But we want to give some listeners some answers.
I know. Like, to me, I think the most interesting thing we've been talking about is back to the work, right? Which is, you know, whatever type of relationship you're in or whatever the state of it, you know, how best, you know, and I think you did a good job of highlighting how to identify it, you know, these triggers or these things, and then deciding I want to fix them somehow. And so some of it's work on me, but then maybe some of it's work on them too. So I think, you know, we're back to how, you know, the self-awareness, the emotional intelligence, the work you do to manage your emotions is part of it. And then maybe for me, though, more interestingly, is as you grow apart from someone, you know, because of whatever, how do you get them to catch up? Right? Like, or you know, or there are these things that are triggering you that aren't you, that you can't fix by yourself, maybe. Right?
Yeah.
How do you get them? How do you cross the bridge to see if they can come closer? Because I think a lot of relationships die on the rocks right there.
Right.
Right.
You know, I was just having a similar thought. Like during the pandemic, I started to notice things like, hey, does this person make me want to be a better person? Mm-hmm. Like this woman I'm dating, she's very driven. Like I haven't gotten up at 5:30 to meditate, work out, and start work by 8 a.m. for years.
Yeah.
Right? And she's cranking on that. And I'm just like, man, I'm getting soft. And so, you know, she's motivating me to do that. She's also really concerned about my well-being and how she affects me. So all those things are very like not lustful things, but they're very like, they're the foundations of a good relationship.
Yeah. I think having a healthy balance of the emotional and the physical is important. And maybe that is a unicorn where you don't have to sacrifice both. And you can find someone that both is there, but I think it's out there. I think it exists.
But isn't this why some of these games exist though? Is to make sure you have the opportunity to build the emotional connection before, like you have sex, you're like, oh, I'm done. Where maybe if you'd spent 3 days before you had sex, you might have built enough relationship where you're like, I see the rest of this, where it's worth, like I wonder, right? Because
it's not through. It's like how like
or whatever
probably a month,
whatever
right?
it is, yeah.
I just don't think it's there. I don't think you can force that shit.
Right.
You can't.
Yeah.
It's just there. It's like I couldn't put words on the other thing. It's like it's just there. It's like you either emotionally get along or you don't, and you either physically get along or you don't, and it is what it is. And I think you can find someone with both, and I don't think that's unicorn shit.
Someone for everyone.
Keep on looking.
A lot of fish in the sea rule, right? You just have to keep meeting more. Yeah, that's super interesting.
And I would bet that I don't think it's not there because it's not your typical, your previous brunette, this, that,
Type.
whatever. I think it's something else.
Sure.
And it's interesting because there are, both of you are fit, relative to me, and right, for sure, and way more off the relative side, just to be clear. So there are something you could do. So let's say, like I'm looking for the 10, or I want someone who's fit. Usually it's better if you're fit. Not always. Sometimes you could find the person who's not as, you can match, but you really make your life harder, with that. So I feel like a lot of the physical things, at least in an age cohort, right, where you're all similar ages or whatever, you can match on the physical more. And I could be wrong on this. This may be my total misperception of this, because it's obviously not been a huge priority for me. Like I'm not trying to win someone based on my looks, right? And so, though still I'll take a shower and, trim my hair
Showers are good.
And wear the best clothes and shoes I have or whatever on a date or whatever. But it's not the priority for me, right? And so I feel like some of this is addressable by discipline. Like I'm going to work out more, or I'm going to set some goals and go achieve whatever this is, so I can improve my matchmaking chances, right?
But here's the deal: if she put on a brown wig and was all of a sudden brunette, it still would not be there. That's exactly. So when you asked me something earlier, and I couldn't put it into words, and you articulating the story is a perfect example that indicates how there are connections. Your connection with somebody, if it's right, cannot always be put into words, because the connection isn't just based off of they check the box that they're this hair color, this body type, this job, this car, da 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 da. Like you could check all those boxes and that emotional and or physical chemistry could still not be there.
Right.
It's just a feeling.
It's not lust.
Right.
So we made it that far that it's beyond lust, and we get beyond the lust. And then we have this communication and passion, and then there's something else in there.
Yeah.
That clicks.
Like what goes in there? Because it's not, maybe it's genetics, could be something that's part of it. But what else is in there? Like that's what I'm trying to piece apart, because is it education level, maybe socioeconomic stuff, maybe the life interest, the fact that, I had divorced parents, or I grew up poor, or I grew up rich, like all that kind of gels into this? Or is it something simpler? Like, is this something it's in your control to improve your matchmaking pool chances, to find this thing you're looking for? Is it definable, or is it random chance? Like that's what I'm trying,
I'm not quite sure it's definable, because
if it's not definable, it feels like you're in random chance land then.
That's why I think online dating is so hard, because what I would describe this thing as is an energy. It's an energy between you and the other person. And you can't necessarily see energy. You just feel it. It's like, let me make this a little bit more tangible. Have you ever been in a group of people, whether it's one person to 3, 5 or more, and they're just very negative? Like they're just bitching and complaining. And now all of a sudden you just feel this heaviness. And it's just like, like you don't like it. Now maybe you're bitching and complaining. You're like, why was it? I was just so happy 5 minutes ago. Like, and your energy just gets weighted down and it doesn't feel good. Like that's what I mean by energy.
Sure.
With other people. And in energy, you can't, there's no way to picture it. Like there's no way to describe it or picture it. It's just a feeling. It's just a...
Yeah.
Right, but let me ask you this. So are we on a continuum though? You know, energy changes. Like change day to day, week to week, month to month. You know, there's a baseline we're on, but you know, I'm up, down, or whatever. Mm-hmm. So are we back to this random thing where if you meet me at the right time, we have energy, you know, like we're connecting, you know, in that dating. And then are we saying then that you should try to date people multiple times to make sure you're not missing the wave where you connect or whatever? Or is there still something else that's actually not variable that is part of this, right? Well,
so there's that like energy, that connection, right? And obviously your energy is not stable. It goes up and it goes down. But I think you have to have that initial energetic pull or connection that starts to ground things. But then from there, it starts going into doing your own work, them doing their work, and having honest, blunt, transparent conversations.
We've come down to it's this energetic thing. Meanwhile, we've listed every other requirement to check the boxes, and it's coming down to energy.
Yeah.
It is coming down to energy.
100%.
Yeah. So it's not in our control as far as we know, or there's more science we need here, or more introspection, or another 5,000 years of Zen or something has to be worked out here. Because it feels like it should be in control. Like you should be able to find the person you want to love.
Because everyone's got check
but
boxes.
The reason why you're not finding it is because you're trying to live out these narratives that are bullshit.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's part of it.
And you're also living out these narratives. Okay, so there's narratives that are bullshit, first of all. And then you're also trying to be somebody you're not because you are distracted by these narratives and what you think everyone else is doing and blah, blah, blah. And so if you're not even in tune with yourself and what you want and who you are, how the hell are you supposed to meet somebody that you energetically work with that also probably meets a lot of your other desires? Which, by the way, your checkbox, your list is probably going to change a lot the more in touch with yourself that you get.
So I think then, you know, if we use the wave analogy or whatever, if you fix those kind of things or adjust your perspective, you're going to greatly increase the chance of finding a matching wave, right?
Someone you can have a productive relationship with.
And the more you don't do that, you've narrowed where things are going to connect, right?
Because I talked about this in the last episode. It's like what you put out, you're going to get back. So if you keep putting out that you have this fancy car when really you rented it, and I'm being dramatic, but like, I mean, I think that is a reality for some people, but you keep putting out this vibe and this image that of this lifestyle that you don't even live or like or love, you're going to attract somebody who wants that, and then you're never going to be able to keep up with them, and then you're just going to go into misery land.
Or you don't have the other pieces you need to fully attract them, right?
Yeah.
You might get their eye, but then everything else is missing that they need, right? Because you've totally are picking the wrong things.
Right. So I think we're wrapping this up. So you go for the hot ones, right?
I think everybody does at some level, but I do think there's different realities, right?
Yeah. That's why people go for the hot ones, because that's really simple. Did you you have an answer?
Yeah, because you don't have to work.
Yeah.
It'd be really easy if I could just have a house and a car and not have to work to pay for any of it.
Yeah, it's kind of like the hot one. Yeah.
Yeah, there are these different dials, right? Depending on what your goals are, I guess. Yeah.
All right. Well, we did get some insight into the type of guy that you would date and what you're looking for, and so that there is some tangible stuff in there. And then there's some things like then it's up to energy.
Yeah, but I feel like we got right at the end, this could be another episode or whatever, where it's really like at the end of the day, if we're agreeing it's a bit random and it's not totally in your control, then you want to put your best foot forward. right? You want to be authentic. You want to,
Right.
you want to do the work on the emotional intelligence. You want
to be real.
You want to be real, and you want to know kind of what you want, and you want to know, you want to have some life goals, and you want to have all these other things. Those are way more important than opening up, the book, The Game. I don't know if everybody's read it, but which is like, here's how to pick up women, or whatever. And the same things probably work on guys too, I guess. And so, so I think there is something there. If you want to be successful in dating or maximize your chances, then you really need to do these basic mental health things at the end of the day, and emotional health things, and you're really going to open the pool up, because more likely your energy wave will grab someone else's that
syncs with you.
I think that's a great summary, because now it's just about being more real.
It's being about so being real, living in reality is going to greatly increase your chance of finding somebody that you're happy with.
Yeah.
Right.
And you don't need to be a model.
Yeah, well, clearly the 7 billion population on Earth would kind of demonstrate that that you don't have to be a 10, right?
Yeah. Anything in parting words of wisdom from you?
No, I think that sums it up. Yeah, I would just say, and I said this on the other episode, is just be you. And if you have a hard time doing that, that's a trigger. What is making you feel like you have to answer this that way? Or what is making you feel like you have to post a picture of you doing XYZ? Or what is making you feel like this is what you have to say to the girl to get her to meet up with you or whatever? Like, those are triggers for you to look into. Like, why do I feel like I have to do that? And start to look into that. And you'll probably start to debunk, well, I'm just kind of going along with what everybody else does, but I don't want to be a sheep.
That's right. Yeah, you're not in your reality.
Right. And so figure out what your reality is without all the distractions, without all of the stories that we're told and the crazy expectations people think we're supposed to live up to. Just forget it. Try to push past them.
Be you.
And being you is going to come off confident and very attractive, and it's going to attract the right woman.
Yeah. It's crazy how much we keep coming back to the red pill. The non-politicalized version of the red pill. But, where we keep landing back like, man, life's just easier if you're just in reality, right? You're going to get richer. You're going to be happier. You're going to have a better love life. If the closer you can get to reality is what it sounds like. Is where we've been at least the last several episodes.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
Thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me.